Hello and welcome to episode 121 of the Big Fat Life podcast here on the Pink Eagle Media Network. I'm your host, Dan Rosado. And yes, this is the final episode of the Big Fat Life podcast. So how do you say goodbye? That's the question, right? That's the question that's been plaguing me all week because I honestly don't know. I've never had to really say goodbye to something as big as a podcast. It's kind of incredible. But I think the best thing to do is to first share some thoughts on what this podcast has meant to us and then explain to you what exactly is happening. So let me start here. When we started this podcast, it started out as an opportunity for me to tell my story of weight gain and weight loss. And when I first spoke to Alyssa about it, she was really excited. I finally had an idea for a podcast topic because we'd been circling for about a year prior to launching those podcasts on what are we going to talk about? What is the podcast going to be about? And I knew that hosting a podcast, it meant that whatever the topic had to be something that was close to me, something that I was experienced in, something that I felt competent at least speaking about. And something I knew well was weight gain and weight loss and weight gain and so on and so forth. And, in fact, on the first episode of the Big Fat Life, the first words that I spoke was me sharing my weight. Here's a clip. I'm going to play it right off my phone. A little music.
So I recently weighed in at 252 pounds. That is the highest that I've ever seen on a scale.
And I listened to that and I remember thinking that pause of me saying it and then waiting to say the next words because I was frightened to share that. It was hard enough for me to share, to realize it and then tell Alyssa and sharing it with everyone else. But I did it because I thought that it was important. It was important for me to keep me accountable, but it was important to be honest with you guys, to tell you exactly what was what and what was happening. And it was a thought that if I can be honest with you, then someone out there would relate and connect to the message I was trying to put out, which was that we're not alone. Right? The message is that we all go through this, that there is obesity everywhere and there are choices that we can make to help ourselves, but it's so much deeper than the food choices we make. And that was one of the biggest things that unveiled over time on this podcast was that there's so much mental behind this, so much of what's happening, but I always like to say what's happening between the ears that affects how we relate to food. That food is more than just what we use to sustain ourselves, unfortunately, because sometimes we use it as a crutch. We use it to self-medicate in a very negative way. And the journey became about finding a positive way. Something I still struggle with to this day. Fortunately, I never, ever reached 254 pounds as a 5'4", 5'5" man. But my journey took me down to 190 pounds. I went back up to like 220, lost some more weight. I've been maintaining, I haven't weighed myself in a very long time because I kind of realized that the scale was creating more of a problem. But I've stayed about the same weight now for over a year. And while I still have weight I'd like to lose, and I hope I will lose, and I'm still working on that, I just felt that this podcast really helped me beyond words because it kept me always in tune with the idea that I wasn't alone, that other people were going through things just like me, sometimes worse than me, and people succeeded. So it was important to at least be honest with you. And then the podcast evolved. The podcast evolved because shortly after I shared my story, it kind of was like, well, where else do we go with this? And it felt like we wanted to share the stories of other people. So we started to reach out. Alyssa and I asked people if they'd be willing to come on the show and share their stories, and they did. We got so many people willing to speak on the podcast and talk about some of the most honest and vulnerable stories, more than we could have ever imagined. To this day, it's the single most remarkable and rewarding part of doing this show. People willing to share their very personal stories with us. And that has kept us going. We have done, this is episode 121. Until recently, every Wednesday, we were giving you a brand new episode of the Big Fat Life podcast. And it wasn't always easy. As many guests responded to our call and were willing to come on, sometimes scheduling doesn't work. And there were weeks where the day before an episode, I didn't have a guest and I didn't know what to do. And Alyssa and I were trying to reach out and we would get someone. We would always find someone willing to talk. And it was kind of a rush because when you turn out an episode that quickly, you feel like, woo, we did it. But it definitely had its struggles. It definitely had been hard. And we were just happy to be able to do it. And recently, when I skipped a week, there were a lot of things happening at the same time. One thing was feeling like I need to do something else with my life, with my career. I needed to figure something out because my career is going very well. I've been a video editor for 20 years. And I love editing video. I really, really do. But somewhere down the line, I feel like I'll need to transition. And I don't know what that transition will be. A big part of it, I believe, is going to be going into business for myself. And to make that change and to actually do those things, I need something that is what I call the biggest, most expensive commodity that we have, which is time. And yes, it's very cliche. There's only 24 hours in a day. And what do you do with those 24 hours? But in all honesty and all kidding aside, between just life in general and this podcast, there didn't seem to be any time to take on any new endeavors. And that was weighing on me. So when that week came that we didn't put out an episode, it gave me time to think. It's what I needed, I guess. And in that time, it became very obvious that something that happens in life, you have an idea, you have a plan, and as you move forward through life, that plan alters and you start to think about, oh, well, it's not exactly the way I thought it was going to go. And hopefully it's going better than you imagined. And with this podcast, there were a lot of thoughts. There were a lot of feelings of imagining what could happen with this. Where can this show go? Well, the positive. Many people listened. Many people responded. Many people downloaded. Many people continuously listened and reached out to us and told us what they thought of the show and really gave us that driving force to keep going. But there was also that lingering feeling of, well, where else can we go with this show? There's always more stories to tell, and everyone's story, truly, truly believe, is important. But me personally, my story, my journey, it needs to go beyond the Big Fat Life. And being able to edit for myself as a business is something that is a growing passion in me. And to be able to make that happen, the show, which takes up so much time, ends up being the one aspect of my life that has to go away. And that wasn't an easy decision, but it was a decision that Alyssa and I, we discussed it, and came to terms with the idea that maybe it's time to say goodbye, at least for this. I love to podcast. I love being able to speak to you guys, to be in your ears as you travel throughout your day, work out, drive, walk, run, whatever you're doing when you listen. It means a lot. It really, really does, because I listen to podcasts all the time. And those podcasts that I listen to, I appreciate that they're there giving me content that I want to absorb. And we hope that we gave you content that you wanted to absorb. But alas, we're at a crossroads, and we have to kind of move on. You know, there's a Tom Petty song. It's one of my favorite Tom Petty songs, called "Time to Move On." And he says, "Time to move on, time to get going. What lies ahead, I have no way of knowing. But under my feet, babe, the grass is growing. It's time to move on. It's time to get going." And I love that song because of that one little line that he throws in. Doesn't know where the road's going to take him, but under his feet, the grass is growing. Life is moving on. Things are happening. Things are alive. But where are you in this journey? What are you going to do next? And if there's something that I've learned from all of you, from all the guests, from people who've shared their stories on Instagram and reached out to us, is that this is always a journey. And it goes so much more beyond weight loss. Weight loss is important for health, but we've also learned that there can be unhealthy weight loss. There could be healthy weight gain. And health is really the most important topic that we discuss. Physical health, mental health. And that has been the most eye-opening experience, instead of being obsessed with weight and obsessed with size. Sure, we all like to look better and feel better, but the idea of wouldn't we just all want to be healthy? And part of that is sometimes making decisions where things have to change. And so that's where we are. That's where we are today. That's why I'm speaking to you. And that's why we're in our last episode. It's funny because we always start the episode saying, you know, the Big Fat Life podcast here on the Pink Eagle Media Network. And the reason it was the Pink Eagle Media Network is Pink Eagle Media is a company that I registered as an LLC, not knowing where any of this would go. And the thinking was, with podcasting, that we would maybe do other podcasts as well. Something that you may not know is I have a lot of ideas all the time for different podcasts. Alyssa does too. And we talk about them. Some of them were like, yeah, that's going to be too hard to pull off. And some are, that could be good if we only had time to do it. And as we continue on the last 2 years, it's been more. It's like 2.5 years of doing the Big Fat Life podcast. Having time for another podcast wasn't realistic. So the Pink Eagle Media Network ended up being a podcast of one. But Pink Eagle Media is the name of the video production company that I'm looking to pursue. Video production, podcast editing. Now that this experience has been given to me, I can help people with their podcasts. So there's an opportunity there that if I don't take, I'm going to regret. So that hopefully explains why we're making this change, why we're ending this show, and why we won't be bringing you any more episodes. I do feel, quite honestly, that there will be podcasts in the future. It will be a different topic. It will be when I can find the time and the passion to pursue those other topics. But between now and then, I'll be silent from the microphone. The episodes will still be available. If they don't, I don't know if they'll stay on the podcast feed, but if not, they'll definitely be on YouTube. Big Fat Life Podcast will keep that channel. And I even would like to, there's a lot of episodes from before we released to YouTube that were recorded video, and I never released those. So I may do those in the upcoming weeks, just some old episodes, and load them up there so you guys can watch them whenever you like. It's been amazing to be able to do this show. And I wish that I could thank each and every one of you individually. I wish I could shout out every single person that's ever been on the show. Unfortunately, because we were so fortunate to do so many episodes, shouting every single person out would take way, way too long. However, there are a few guests that I feel I need to thank because they weren't just guests, but they became podcast and social media friends. They gave me ideas. They shared their thoughts and helped this podcast grow. They shouted out to anyone that would listen. They would share. They would, let everyone else know, sometimes bring other guests to us. So it's been an incredible, amazing experience. And I just want to pay tribute to a few of those people right now. So first, thank you, Nikki Hines. Nikki's been on this show 3 times, I believe. One of those times I'll never forget. She was eating a slice of pizza. I'm pretty sure she was trying to tempt me, but I got you, Nikki. I'll remember that. But yeah, just a really good friend and has been really supportive of this show. Heather Lumberg. Heather Lumberg's been on this show also 3 times. And what I'll never forget with Heather is that every time she came on, she was in a different stage of her journey. And it's amazing how far she's come. Now she's a trainer. She has her own clients. She's healthy. She's doing great. And we really wish her the best of luck. Stephanie Brown. Stephanie came on the show a while back to discuss her weight loss on keto, but more importantly, about mental health and her battles with anxiety, depression, and alcoholism. And she's still sober to this day, which is awesome. And we went on to do a few bonus episodes together that we called the Mental Break, where we talked about what was going on with her, with me, what we were, feeling how do we deal with anxiety? How does she deal with depression? And I learned so much about how fragile mental health can be and how important it is to address it when it's affecting someone negatively. So all the thanks to that. Alex Porro, Gormy, John Arpino, Mike Taverna, Daryl Perry, Willie Gillis. These guys took a chance to be on the show in the very beginning when no one knew what this podcast was about. So honestly, just thank you to them. To my family, they were so supportive. The first time we released an episode, I heard from everyone just about what they felt, how great it sounded, how happy they were with it. And it really just gave us that boost. I mean, I can't say that enough. And you guys know that too, that when you start something new, whether it's a weight loss journey or a new job or a move or whatever you're doing in life, the support of the people around you and the people who love you is, it's invaluable. I mean, it's just, you can't put, it's so amazing to feel that. To all of you, the people who listen, without you, this show would have ended a long time ago. The fact that you took the time to listen, to respond, to let us know what you thought, it's an amazing thing. It really is. The connection that we feel with you guys, the inspiration that we get from you guys, the inspiration we get from people who are guests on the show. I've been blown away with some stories. Alyssa has too, where we see people just do these amazing things. And it can't emphasize that enough. It's not just about weight loss, but when you're someone, who's sedentary, not healthy, doesn't like to work out, doesn't eat healthy, and then finds a way to just figure it out, go on their journey, lose weight, and become active and healthy and become advocates for health, just blows us away that you take the time. The fact that so many of you do that gives me purpose. It gives a lot of people in this podcasting world purpose who try to put out a good, positive message. And I thank you for that, for the bottom of my heart. And obviously, to my lovely wife, Alyssa Rosado, producer on this show. She gave me, when we first talked about doing a podcast and I was about to launch this, she gave me this. Now, for you guys who are not watching the YouTube, but you're listening at home, It's a dove. It's like this very nice dove with the wings spread out. And on the wing, it says, anything is possible. The power is already inside of you. And I hang it on the wall. Every podcast, I look at it before I go. You guys don't see it. I don't hang it behind me. But it is those words and that faith in me always kept me going, even in times where maybe I didn't even know if I could do an episode. I still did one. Those words meant everything. It's important. And if you find that person or if you have that person, hold on to them tight when they can support you and want you to follow your dreams. I never would be following these dreams without her, because if it was not for her, I wouldn't even know that those dreams exist. So thank you for being my guiding light to success. And with that, I think it's time to say goodbye. I thank you all. I wish you all the best. We're still going to be on Instagram. We're not going away, but this podcast is going to say goodnight. Thank you so much again. We love you.